Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. This is Sky News Breakfast. Top stories for you today. Going for gold. China wins the first medal of the Tokyo Olympics. Britain's mass parkrun events restart for the first time since lockdown began. England sees full music festivals and busy nightclubs for the first time since the easing of restrictions.
I'm feeling good, but I'm scared because we know what's coming next. COVID's coming next.
Extremely concerned, police appeal for information about an 11-year-old girl who left her home in Bolton and travelled to London. Get your freedom back. Gareth Southgate urges young people to get their vaccine.
For 7 days in a row, we've seen temperatures up to 30 degrees Celsius across the UK. But today, the heat wave comes to an end with thunderstorms in the south. All the details coming up shortly.
And at 2:15, we'll take through the papers with the journalist Badisha and the deputy editor of Spiked, Tom Slater. Well, morning to you. The first medals have been awarded at the Tokyo Olympics. China took the honours with gold in the women's 10-metre air rifle. So far, no medals for Team GB, but in rowing, Helen Glover qualified for the semi-finals in the women's pair as she goes for a third gold medal. Our sports correspondent Tom Parmenter reports from Tokyo.
The first gold medal of these games went to China in the women's 10-metre shooting. Shona McIntosh from Edinburgh only finished 12th and missed out on the final. In the rowing, Helen Glover is back. She's had 3 children since her gold in Rio. She and Polly Swan finished third in their heat and are in to the semi-finals. Last night, Japan tried to find the right tone in their opening ceremony, respecting the pandemic while finally welcoming the world to their games. It's been a long, hard road, but finally, Tokyo is ready to light the way out of a pandemic. Right up until the last seconds, they protested outside. Others came to the roads around the stadium just to feel their home Olympics. Almost everyone else watched at home. This is as close as they'll get. The pared-back parade was a gathering from all corners of the world. The organisers think they are all COVID-free.
You are true Olympic athletes.
Watching all this here in Tokyo is now actually no different to watching it anywhere else in the world. It's only on TV. You can join in on your smartphone and tap and clap away and cheer, but it's not the same, is it? But it is still the Olympic Games, still the pinnacle for so many of our athletes.
When you go through tough times with people, you realise how much hard graft they've put in, and to now be here, be in Tokyo, training on the pitch, it's all coming true. And I think that's really special and a moment that we all need to embrace because we've had a lot of hard work to get here, and actually now it's just the fun bit.
Team GB's star sprinter Dina Asher-Smith was a Gamesmaker volunteer back in London 2012. Her moment comes in a Games when podium protests will still cause controversy, but the rules on taking the knee have been relaxed.
If somebody does decide to take a knee and it was still banned, I couldn't understand how the IOC was actually going to enforce that in terms of, would you take away somebody's medal? Would you penalise somebody for being against racism? Like, how on earth was that ever going to go down?
Japanese tennis star Naomi Osaka was given the crowning moment. But nobody knows how these games will play out. It is a global experiment that's now live.
Well, Tom's in Tokyo for us this morning. So how's it going on day one, Tom?
Not a sparkling start yet by Team GB, Stephen, but the games are very much coming thick and fast now. The road race is on at the moment, going through some very hilly stretches around the foothills of Mount Fuji, spectacular backdrops. Team GB riders had a bit of a crash early on. Geraint Thomas and Tao Geoghegan-Hart clashed wheels with an Austrian. It was a bit messy, but they're back up on their bikes and riding through pretty tough conditions with the heat and humidity, but they've got a bit of work to do to really challenged the leaders in there. In the tennis, we've seen Andy Murray win his first doubles match with Joe Salisbury, beating a French pair 6-3, 6-2. And Heather Watson, sadly, is out in the first round. She lost to a German in the first round. She's our only female competitor in the tennis after Johanna Konta had to pull out due to a coronavirus test quite a few days ago now. In the boxing, we will see medals. I guarantee that through these games. We'll see debuts today for Caris Artingstall from Macclesfield in Cheshire. She's fighting a Botswanan at 9:15 UK time. And Peter McGrail from Liverpool, a very popular Scouser on the boxing team. He's very hotly tipped for a medal as well. And he will be going up against a Thai boxer at around 10 o'clock UK time. So there are lots of medal hopes. They will come further down the line. And they're getting ready in Uttoxeter in Staffordshire this morning because their man Adam Peaty is in the pool for one of his heats at lunchtime. He, of course, is the world record-holding breaststroke superstar, and he's won plenty of medals before, but he's looking to break world records again in these games. It would be a huge surprise if Adam Peaty doesn't win gold in these Olympic Games, and his nan, Mavis, has been tweeting again. She was something of a star in previous games as well, saying, "Good morning, everybody. Well, this is it. Let's enjoy the Olympics 2020. So that is the word from Uttoxeter in Staffordshire as they wait for their man, Adam Peaty, in the pool. But not the brilliant start from Team GB that we were hoping for, but I'm suspecting, really, that will change pretty quickly.
OK, Tom, thank you. Now, the mass participation parkrun events restart this morning for the first time since March last year. The weekly 5-kilometre run takes place in more than 500 locations across Britain.
When we last delivered Parkrun in England in March 2020, I think we'd gone 16 and a half years without missing a weekend. And now we've missed 70 Saturdays in a row. So it's good to be back this morning. It means such an incredible amount to be able to reopen today. You know, over the last 17 years, Parkrun has had the most amazing impact on people's health and well-being. And our mission statement is to make the world healthier and happier.
Well, across England, major public events and gatherings have resumed following the easing of restrictions. Large-scale music festivals are taking place this weekend and nightclubs are reopened, but it comes as more than 600,000 people have been told to isolate by test and trace. Our correspondent Sharman Freeman-Powell reports.
All glammed up and ready to enjoy Freedom Weekend. Clubbers across England queued outside of clubs for the first time in almost 18 months.
It's amazing. I love seeing everyone with no masks on.
It feels back to normal for once.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Back into the
so
real
awesome.
world.
I'm feeling good, but I'm scared because we know what's coming next. COVID's coming next, but it's important for our mental health to, you know, go out there. But I do agree it's the wrong thing to do. I'm scared, basically.
She's not the only one that's concerned. These celebrations come with caution, as over 500,000 people are being forced to self-isolate in the latest pingdemic.
The pingdemic is because we have a pandemic, and this is the first time really that we have been on an upward curve, an upward trajectory. So it is inevitable that a large number of people will be being asked to isolate.
This weekend also sees Latitude Festival welcome thousands of music lovers under a government event safety trial. People here also have the chance to grab a jab in between acts.
A lot of them are coming back towards the end of the weekend. They don't want to have the side effects during the festival. It's a relief for them, especially with the new guidelines that they want everyone to be double vaccinated so they can go into nightclubs, and I think that will be, you know, spread across a wider where you need 2 doses.
Back in central London, clubbers were over the moon to be back on the dance floors again. But if revellers don't take a cautious approach to their rediscovered freedom, these pubs and clubs may have to close again. Sharman Freeman-Powell, Sky News.
Police say they're extremely concerned about an 11-year-old girl who's disappeared from her home in Bolton. Fatima Qadir is understood to have travelled to London in the early hours of yesterday morning. Let's talk to Milena Veselinovic, who's in the newsroom for us. What more do we know, Milena?
Well, police say that Fatima left her parents' home in Bolton at some point after 7:30 p.m. on Thursday. She went to Bolton train station, where the police say she came into contact with an unknown man and a woman. They appeared worried for her. They were on the same train as she was to Manchester Piccadilly station and then on to Birmingham New Street station. Now, the police say that Fatima arrived at London Euston station alone at 1:13 a.m. on Friday, but they would like to trace this man and woman and speak to them because they believe that perhaps she had spoken to them about where she was headed once she was in London. Now, understandably, Fatima's family are distressed. They released a statement through the police, read out here by Detective Chief Inspector Paul Rowlinson.
Fatima, we miss you. You're not in any trouble, and we want you to come home. We want to at least know you're safe, and again, you're not in any trouble. Please contact us direct or the police. We're in a state of shock. We really want to know where she is, who she's with, but most of all, that she's just safe. Fatima, please come home.
Now, last CCTV images of Fatima show her leaving Euston Station, but there had been sightings of her around London Bridge Tube Station, which leads the police to believe that she may still be in that area, and they're appealing to anyone with any information to come forward.
OK, Milena, thank you. Now, the government's continuing to face pressure over its pledge to fix the social care crisis. Age UK has written to the Prime Minister 2 years after Boris Johnson took office and promised to outline a plan to reform adult care. Well, let's talk to the Head of External Affairs at Age UK, Hannah Pearce. Good to see you this morning. I mean, what would you have liked to see happen in that 2-year period?
Well, we were really pleased when Boris Johnson promised to fix care once and for all when he became Prime Minister 2 years ago today. But here we are 2 years on, still waiting for his plan. And it just doesn't feel like the government understands the urgency of the issue, even after the tragedies that we've seen in the social care sector due to COVID in this past year and a half.
I mean, I was going to say, it doesn't help your case whatsoever, but, I mean, there is an argument, isn't there, to say, well, you know, all these sort of issues were going to take a back seat over the last 18 months, as unfortunate as that is.
Yeah, I mean, we know it's a very difficult issue, it's a very expensive issue, but it's a really important issue, and we're really hopeful that the Prime Minister can keep his promise to fix care. We found from our research that there have been 1.4 million requests for care from older people in the 2 years since the Prime Minister made his promise to fix care that have been turned down. So that's around 14,000 people a week who've contacted their local authority to get help for care, or 2,000 people a day who have asked for care and been turned down. And this isn't the fault of local councils. They can only provide care for someone if they have the funding and the staff to do the job. So we really do need the Prime Minister to keep this promise. We understand it's been a really, really challenging time due to COVID. But, you know, 2 years on, we really feel it's time for him to come up with a plan to reform and fund social care properly. People rely on it.
And we've been talking about this for decades, haven't we? Why is this such a difficult problem for the politicians to solve?
Well, it's a huge problem. We know that there are 1.5 million older people who aren't getting care that they need at the moment, and hundreds of thousands of older and disabled people who are likely to need care. We know that because of COVID, people have, in a way, their disabilities and illnesses have been accelerated because they haven't had the help that they've needed over the past year. We know that lunch clubs and day centres have closed, so people who were managing with a bit of help have now been struggling on their own and have got to the point where they've needed to approach their local authority to sort out some kind of social care package, and they've found that it's not there.
Yeah, but what I'm wondering, Hannah, is because successive governments have tried to tackle this and not made any real headway, why are successive governments failing on this? What is it about the issue that makes it so difficult to solve?
I think it's the funding. There isn't agreement on how to fund it. We've had successive governments, you're right, for 10 years ago we had the landmark Dilmot Commission report commissioned by the coalition government. We thought that was a hopeful chance for reform. That didn't happen. And we've had since then 6 social care ministers, 4 secretaries of state for health and social care, all who have promised to reform social care. And yet here we are without any reforms coming forward. We need to have cross-party agreement on the issue, but it's a very difficult issue and it involves a lot of funding. But politics is about priorities, and we felt that the Prime Minister had chosen this as a priority, and we really hope that he's able to deliver on that promise.
And as you say, though, with every passing day, you're looking at, 2,000 people or so not getting the funding that they need. So, I mean, this really is a case where every day does count.
It does, and my overriding message to the Prime Minister is that there's a very human cost to these repeated delays, and the price is being paid by those people who desperately need care reform.
OK, Hannah Pearce from Age UK, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the family of a British hiker who's been missing in the Pyrenees have been told that police have found possible human remains close to where she went missing. 37-year-old Esther Dingley had been walking alone in the mountains near the Spanish and French border and was last seen in November. The England manager, Gareth Southgate, has joined a campaign encouraging people to get vaccinated against coronavirus. In a video message, he was asking younger people especially to get the jab so they can have their freedom back. A truck driver has survived after this bridge collapsed during severe flooding in eastern Russia. Reports say more than 650 homes have been flooded, 5 bridges have been washed away during extreme downpours in the Zabakalsk region. Now, this weekend, Sky News will host a half-hour climate special featuring all the coverage of the extreme weather recently. You can see it today and tomorrow here on Sky News, first showing at 11:30 this morning. Well, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Here's Joe.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello, good morning to you. Well, yesterday, of course, we had an extreme heat warning for Ireland. And today we have warnings out for much of England and Wales for thunderstorms. So it's quite a different day that we're waking up to. Good deal of cloud here in Lincolnshire, along with many other eastern counties. Much of that should burn back. And certainly for Scotland, for Ireland, for northern parts of England, it will be another mostly fine day with some sunshine and temperatures into the 20s, perhaps maxing at around 29 degrees Celsius for Ireland. So still very warm there. But it's a very different story further south. We've seen heavy, thundery rain spreading its way up from the southwest. It's currently lying roughly in a line from Cardiff and Bristol down towards the southeast. The southeast in particular seeing some widespread thunderstorms, a lot of lightning, thunder, some large hail mixed in, gusty winds as well. Really unpleasant driving conditions, not particularly nice weather anyway. Well, that line of thunderstorms is going to move its way into central areas and parts of East Anglia before it eventually starts to die away. And then we'll just see further thunderstorms developing in the south. So, yeah, some pretty unpleasant weather around today. And as I say, warnings out for those. Temperatures in the low 20s for most, 28 or 29 the high.
Now, in Hungary, the law is officially called the Children Protection Act, but there's little doubt over who it's really targeting. Hungary's Prime Minister wants depictions of gay lifestyles and transgender issues outlawed in schools. Viktor Orban's new law and a referendum designed to confirm it have put him at odds with the EU. One activist told Sky News he may have to leave the country. From Budapest, our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons reports.
There is little sign that the city is about to host its Pride celebration. No banners, few posters and hardly any rainbow flags. It's supposed to be a focal point for fun, but for many in Hungary's LGBT+ community, this is a worrying and divisive time. Prime Minister Viktor Orban has just driven through laws to restrict what he calls homosexual propaganda, the depiction of LGBT+ characters in schoolbooks or television programmes. His supporters say it is a move to protect family values.
It's not a human right for LGBTI activists to be in schools. It's not their right to educate children about their lifestyle. Lifestyles are for adults to make, and they are free to make whatever choice they want to choose when they are adults. But when kids are at school, we need to protect them.
Mr. Orbán will hold a referendum on the issue next year. The government has put up inflammatory posters across the city. This one reads, "Do you fear for your child about sexual propaganda?" Emmett is a transgender teenager. He says he's angry and uncertain.
I really hope that it's not going to get worse. But deeply, I feel like I should run for my life out of here, because it will get worse.
So why is all this happening now? Well, Viktor Orbán is facing a parliamentary election next year, and he thinks he's at his best when fighting an enemy. First it was migrants, then the Roma. Now he seems to have picked on the LGBT plus community as his bogeyman. What's more, he is getting slated by EU leaders. But Mr. Orbán's calculation is that the more grief he gets from Brussels, the more support he'll get from Hungarian voters. The genesis of this new political battle was probably sparked by people like Dora Duro, a far-right MP, who publicly destroyed a book of fairy tales because it contained gay characters.
Szerintünk óvodáskorban nincsen helye semmilyen szexuális felvilágosításnak, vagy szexuális tartalmú könyvnek, vagy bármilyen propagandának. Egyszerűen azért, mert még nincsenek abban az életkorban a gyerekek, hogy ezt értenék. Másrésztről ez a magyar kultúra elleni támadás is.
From the political heart of this city, there's now a growing tide of discontent. Some will call it bigotry. Mr. Orbán says he's defending his nation's culture. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Budapest.
Well, a little bit of disappointment for Team GB on the first day of the Olympics. Having been tipped for a medal, Shona McIntosh failed to qualify for the final round of the women's 10-metre air rifle. Well, Olympic programme manager at British Shooting, Alex Ballard, joins us now. Good to see you this morning. Ah, what a shame for Shona. What went wrong, do you think?
Yeah, morning, Stephen. I think, it's a tough event. It's a really tough event, and the margins for error in these precision rifle competitions are so small. And just to put it into context, she's shooting at the target, and the 10 in the centre that she's really aiming for is just the size of a full stop. So it's really tough in a very, very competitive field. So I think, we reflect this morning. We're all bleary-eyed as shooting fans because we were up late into the night, but we reflect with a lot of pride. It was a strong performance from her to finish 12th, actually. She was just over a point away from the final. And I think, it's tough. She's the first athlete out for Team GB that could win a medal. So there's that extra pressure. And really for Shona, this is her second event. Her main event, so to speak, is next weekend in the 3 positions rifle. So I think disappointment, yes, but we're really proud of her for her first Olympics. So we're
yeah, I'll keep trying. Your line's breaking up slightly, Alex. We'll keep trying. I mean, is she the sort of character? Has she got the resilience to then take this on board and push even harder for the next event?
Absolutely. Anybody who knows Shona will know what a steely character she is and what a fighter she is. And, she's done a lot of work on her sort of psychological preparation and psychological ability in the sport. She's got a fantastic team around her in Tokyo. And actually, I think she'll reflect on this. She'll pick herself right back up and she'll go again very, very strongly next weekend.
I mean, how are we in other prospects moving forward? I mean, because we've done quite well, haven't we, previously in the shooting at previous Olympics? I mean, have we built up a strong team this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 5 years ago in Rio, we won 2 medals in the shotgun disciplines, and we've sent a really strong shotgun team out again in those competitions. So we've got the likes of Matthew Coward-Holly, who's coming into this Olympics as a world and European champion. So he's riding high. and he's joined by Aaron Heading, who's won multiple world medals over the years, and Kirsty Barr, who's very similar. So it's a really strong shotgun team for the events that start on Wednesday. We're really excited about what they can do, and we've got the new mixed teams format on Saturday, where Matthew and Kirsty will be going together with a really strong chance of a medal there as well. So yeah, prospects are good for more success for shooting and for Team GB.
As lovely as Wrexham is, Alex, you must be disappointed not to be out there.
Yes, as I look out my window, it's the grey skyline of Wrexham and not the lovely pictures of the Tokyo skyline that I've being sent by the guys on the ground out there. But we're here for the second round of the British Championship. So actually, there's athletes I'm going to be seeing today who will no doubt be the names that perhaps we're talking about in just 3 years' time in Paris. So it's all good. It's not quite the same, but it's still all good.
OK, look, Alex, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, a record 618,000 people were last week told to self-isolate by the NHS COVID app. For many low-paid workers, quarantine, of course, hits them in the pocket. One restaurant worker in self-isolation told us that he'd had to borrow money. Ashna Hurinag went to meet workers hit by the so-called pingdemic in Brighton.
In the week of newfound freedoms, self-isolation alerts are plaguing Brighton's maze of independent shops. Repeated notifications for jewellery maker Natasha meant taking swift action. She's deleted the NHS app completely.
With the amount of stress that businesses have gone under, I don't think it's very fair for everyone to have to do it. Otherwise, literally everyone will be in isolation the whole time when we don't actually have COVID.
The exemptions list is designed to tackle the most urgent issues posed by the pandemic. But there are countless businesses who, after 16 months of uncertainty, are finally able to find their feet again, only now to face more disruption. The consensus among many is it's not fair. Whilst critical workers are relieved today, for the many sectors left out, like retail and hospitality, they're contending with potential staff shortages and a loss in revenue. It's Katie's first day back at work after 13 days in self-isolation. She struggled mentally and financially and believes both could have been avoided.
In my opinion, as long as you know that you don't have COVID and you're not living with anyone that has COVID, for me, I see no reason why you shouldn't keep coming into work, because for me, the app is so flawed because it's done by Bluetooth. So I could live next door to someone who has COVID and I could get pinged.
For the self-employed or those like Greg on a 0 hours contract, self-isolating also means a sudden cut to their paycheck.
I've lost a lot of money to COVID. I've had to unwillingly borrow money off my mother to pay my rent, as I'm quite deep in my overdraft at the moment. So yeah, financially I've been hit quite hard.
The app is seen as one of the government's key tools for ensuring public safety. From the 16th of August, the double jabbed are free from its clutches. Until then, daily testing in place of isolation feels like a luxury that these workers can only dream of. Ashna Haranag, Sky News in Brighton.
Well, this is Sky News Breakfast. Let's see what the weather's going to do for you today with Joe.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello there, good morning to you. Well, I can't say it's all change, but parts of the country are seeing a big change. Yesterday, of course, we got an extreme heat warning out for Northern Ireland with temperatures for the 7th day running topping 30 degrees Celsius. Today and tomorrow, we've got warnings out for thunderstorms, and those thunderstorms have already arrived, and those in the south probably know all about it. They've spread in from the southwest overnight, currently lying in a line from the Cardiff-Bristol area down towards the southeast. And it's the southeast which are being hit hardest by these thunderstorms. We're looking at frequent lightning and thunder, large hail, gusty winds and torrential downpours. Flash flooding is a very real risk as we go through the day. So that line of thunderstorms is actually moving its way northwards. It'll get as far as central areas and East Anglia before it starts to die out. But Further thunderstorms will follow into the south, so not much respite from that. Meanwhile, for Scotland, Ireland, northern parts of England, there is some cloud over eastern counties that will burn back through the day. And then you're looking at more sunshine. And whilst it will be a little bit cooler than it has been for many parts of the country, we're still looking at a high of 28 or 29 degrees Celsius for Ireland.
Time for the papers then this morning with the journalist Badisha and the deputy editor of Spiked, Tom Slater. Good to see you both again. Badisha, can we kick off with the Times looking at COVID rates?
Yeah, I know that every time we're on here and we talk about COVID rates, it's like we're the harbingers of bad news, or at least shocking news. So the headline is really quite startling. 1 in 75 now have COVID, but cases are reducing. So we know that the facts are there are week-on-week rises in new cases, hospitalizations and deaths. And in the last 24 hours, there have been 36,000 new cases. But the rate of growth is slowing. So it's still growing, but less quickly than it was in the previous few days, maybe even the last week or two. But if you want to do a comparison, the rates of new infections, cases and hospitalizations is at the highest they've ever been since February. Now, time has glommed into one big grey mess in the last 18 months or so, but February was really more than a season ago, and it was seen as a critical time then. The controversy here, which actually this article doesn't touch upon, is people who are asking, including SAGE, the government's own advisors, what is the government's strategy? Is the government rolling out some kind of stealth herd immunity strategy where they're waiting for the pandemic to burn itself out, to work through the population, particularly now of younger people who are getting it? And so it will then pass naturally once we have the necessary antibodies. The government aren't saying that that's what their strategy is, but that's exactly what it seems to be. And that's exactly where the ruction, the argument is, because it's very difficult to discern the government's own tactics within this pandemic. Have they taken their eye off the ball? Is there a long-range plan, or is there no plan at all? Another shocking statistic to give you is that a significant proportion of the people who are currently in hospital, around 30%, have had both of their vaccine jabs. Now, what you have to take from this is not that vaccines don't work, but that if there wasn't a generally successful vaccination program, that proportion would be worse. So Jenny Harry is one of the main figures speaking out as an authority figure in the pandemic, has actually said, look, this shows us, if we look at the data, that it's very important to get both of your vaccine jabs. 1 dose doesn't do it. 2 gives you better protection. That doesn't mean that you definitely won't get it. You definitely won't be hospitalized, but it does mean that your protection is higher. But it's extremely sobering news, and it's very hard to keep it all in your head because we really are 18 months into this, and me included, it's very, very wearing, but I do think the facts are in front of us now.
Yeah, we can't take our foot off the pedal just yet, I don't think. To the eye, Tom, looking at taking the knee at the Olympics.
Yes, so the whole taking the knee controversy has reared its head again in relation to the Olympics. So this eye story reporting on the comments made by Dina Asher-Smith, the great British sprinter, the fastest recorded British woman in history, no less, who has said that the IOC, the International Olympics Committee, should not punish any athletes who choose to take the knee or make similar political statements, specifically on the podium. There has already been some softening of the rules. So the Team GB women footballers have been given permission to do the pre-match gesture in line with what the men's team have been doing. But there is still this prohibition on the podium, and the IOC saying that the podium is sacrosanct. Now, I think athletes should be able to make whatever political statements they choose to make, of course. I think clamping down on it is only really going to cause more controversy than less. But at the same time, I think, you know, in a way, I think people presume that these gestures are much more edgy and controversial than they actually are. I mean, Asher-Smith draws a comparison with 1968 and Tommy Smith and John Carlos, you know, raising the Black Power salute on the medal stand at Mexico. But at the same time, I think we're in a very different world now. You know, certainly racism is not as it was in 1968 in a lot of Western countries. But also, when Smith and Carlos made that gesture, you know, they were hounded out of athletics for it. It was a very edgy thing to do. They got an awful lot of flack and threats and all the rest of it. Whereas now, I think in a lot of sports, taking the knee, you'd be applauded by the great and good. for doing this. So I think you can't really keep politics out of sport. I think that's a complete misnomer. I just wish we could kind of keep the culture war out of sport. I'd settle for that. But nevertheless, let athletes say what they're going to say, let people criticise them. That seems like a better fit than to just put prohibitions on these things.
Yeah, yeah. OK, to the Express, Pradisha, looking at social care, you know, we still haven't made any significant progress on this.
No, we haven't. I did quickly want to say I agree with what Tom said, and I really appreciate those comments. But yes, we're on to social care. So what the last 18 months have done is really exacerbate and point up all of the pre-existing problems we had before, and they haven't gone away. So the scandal, of course, here is long-term underinvestment in absolutely vital social care. Now, that includes support for emergent new families and kids, and it also includes support for older residents, vulnerable residents and citizens, and all the rest of it. At the moment, the government only spends £310 per person who needs that later life care. And of course, all of the charities who campaign about this are saying that that's not good enough. 2 years ago, Boris Johnson promised that he'd solve the social care problem, to quote him, once and for all. And of course, we know that events overtook us. But what this new study shows is that up to a quarter of people who are contacting their local authorities saying, I need some help, I need some support with day-to-day living, they're actually being turned down. And of course, as a cost-cutting measure, all of these local authorities have put in ever more stringent rules for whether or not you qualify. And there's no appeals process. So if you're denied what you think is essential social care, but you don't meet all of the criteria, there's no recourse. You can't write to them again, and so on and so forth. We know that all of these forms of help from the state have been shrinking, and that this isn't really a 2 or 3 year problem. This is the culmination of years, probably even decades, in this sort of help shrinking. But it's now reached a stage where it's absolutely critical. And of course, COVID has made all of those inequalities much worse. So if you're well off, if you have lots and lots of social help and good networks, even if you get ill, you're going to be in a better position, relatively speaking, than someone who doesn't have all of those layers of support.
Yeah, it's a hugely difficult and complex issue. Let's turn our attention to something a little bit more fun. The Latitude Festival in the mail type. I can't work out if you're a festival type or not.
Probably not anymore. In my younger years, potentially, but I've got one booked in next month, actually, which I was glad to hear is going ahead. So Latitude Festival is part of one of the pilots in order to test out full capacity outdoor festival events. So there's been a 40,000 strong crowd who have descended on Henham Park in Suffolk for this. And it's things like this which really do warm the heart 18 months into the pandemic. I think we had a similar thing when you saw the crowds in Wembley during the Euro 2020 final. I know that was controversial, but there are just certain things that you cannot do socially distanced. And that's one thing which, whether it's big sporting events, whether it's big musical events, you have to be cheek by jowl. It has to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, because that atmosphere you just cannot recreate if you're all spaced out 2 meters apart. So we'll see how this pilot goes. It seems like a lot of the pilots so far, whether it's nightclubs or festivals or all the rest of it in the previous months, seem to go off broadly without a hitch. And just hoping that we can get back to those kinds of things as well, because it isn't just about being able to go to the shops and the pubs again. It's also about being able to do all kinds of things that just are impossible under the COVID restrictions. So yes, heartwarming to see these kinds of scenes.
See, I've reached the age where I can't imagine why anyone would want to go to a festival at all. Nice little B&B somewhere, maybe, but there you go. That's just me being a right old fogey, Tom. I tell you what, I quite fancy these little trips to the edge of space. Pradisha, what's the Telegraph saying about Jeff Bezos?
Well, it's Jeff Bezos and his rival Richard Branson. I mean, what could this possibly be about, Stephen? Really rich, competitive guys that are literally measuring the size and force and speed of their rockets. One of them gets 50 miles into space. The other one gets 53 miles into space. The main Federal Aviation Administration body says that if you get past 50, so you can just blast off from a field in your back garden or something, then that's it. You've gone into space. You got 50 miles up. And that's it. But while Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson were literally spending billions of pounds trying to do it with their ever-increasing rockets, the FAA actually quietly changed the rules. So Bezos and Branson are not officially astronauts, so they don't get their Blue Peter badge. Basically, you have to meet all of these other criteria, and you have to be doing something for the social.
I think they deserve them anyway. They deserve them anyway. We're out of time. Good to see you both.